Hey guys, it is a holiday long weekend in Canada and I'm going to be very much unlike me and take it, but I didn't want to just do no content on Monday. So this is an extra video this week. I know the content's all been mixed up lately, but that's because it's summer and I'm trying to work on lady bits, and I had that super duper awesome Killjoys on-set piece that I wanted to share with you guys, and lady bits playing through Tomb Raider games and all that stuff, which doesn't feel like work, so I feel like I'm cheating somehow, but I still got to get through them, and those games are really freaking hard. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about me seeing War for the Planet of the Apes. Oh my god. It was so good. It was so good, and it being heavy-handed was part of what made it good. It wasn't so much a movie about war as a movie about war movies. And I thought that was really kind of cool, that it starts off as kind of like Death Wish or Rambo. Well, it starts off as like Platoon and then moves into sort of a Death Wish or a Rambo. And then it goes into those old war caper movies like the Dirty Dozen and The Great Escape. And then it's like the freaking 10 Commandments. It's like rolling back the odometer on film. It's like, whoa. It's like, all right, they're rolling back human cinema as they're sort of rolling back this fictionalized version of, you know, a near future for humanity. But obviously oh my god, like, good movie, and Maurice is the best character. I have loved Maurice for so long because Maurice reminds me of Momo, and Maurice is a ginger, but I've loved Maurice from the first Planet of the Apes movie, and oh my god, this is like Maurice's movie. Like, Maurice wins at life. And this is sort of the purpose of me making this video, because you may know another notable pop culture feminist did not like this movie at all. And I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it's funny how two people can see the exact same movie, make the exact same observations, and come to two completely different conclusions regarding meaning. And I think that War for the Planet of the Apes, because it evokes so many classic films going out throughout history that deal with war and, you know, deals with that sort of nomenclature and shorthand, it ends up being a Rorschach blot. It's a mirror that shows what's inside you. If you go into that movie searching for a theme of compassion and redemption and new life, you're gonna get it. If you go, you know, into that movie looking for the patriarchy is guaranteed to destroy us all, that's what you're gonna see. And quoting from the Feminist Frequency website, the last paragraph is where I went, brr? Like, she's not wrong about her observations of the movie most of the time. But it's the ending, and, you know, I won't read all the $1 million words and toxic masculinity and all that stuff. We'll get to that in a bit, but it's this line. What would be truly radical and wonderful would be to someday see a blockbuster that asserts that understanding, compassion, and cooperation can overcome, and that we can happily share the world with those who are different from us, though not so different as we may have once thought. And to me, that was the ending of War for the Planet of the Apes. I thought that was the message, because the war in the title is not what you think it is going in. It's not what the trailers led you to believe. And I'm not going to spoil it, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But then there are a couple of critical choices that if Maurice, because Maurice is awesome, hadn't shown compassion and hadn't made the non-traditional choice, you know, what we would consider to be the dumb choice in sort of zombie survival fiction, because there's an element of that in this. If he hadn't made that choice, then the ending would have been very different. But then again, it is an act of compassion on Caesar's part that thrusts the whole plot forward. And again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but I thought that was very nuanced. I thought that it isn't compassion always wins. Sometimes compassion can really screw you up, and that's the tricky, nuanced thing about compassion, is compassion is often about losing the short game to win the longer one. I've been having a brief conversation about altruism with a viewer, so I'm sure he's watching this. He goes, "She mentioned me!" And he's got Krogan in his name, which is interesting. But we had this sort of discussion about altruism, and it really got me thinking, and I'm the last person to criticize altruism because I'm bad for it. And it makes me feel stupid a lot of the time. Like, why can't you just do the smart thing instead of the so-called right thing? And because the smart thing is often the self-serving, short-term good outcome, but you're selling a piece of your soul. And there's a real underlying theme. And yes, it connects to masculinity, and it especially connects to the idea of masculinity in wartime. Although you do notice that there are male and female soldiers in the militia group. And the reason a lot of the metaphors are so heavy-handed because they're biblical. You've got the Exodus, you've got definite Christ-like imagery. You've got kind of an I Spartacus moment with Pooh. I'm not kidding. I actually said, "Oh my God, it's monkey. I am Spartacus." Apes. Don't call them monkeys. Sorry, monkey is just a great word. And a video game reference that they never quite put together. And I'm like, through the whole thing, it was so cool. But the sort of Harry Potter and Voldemort relationship with Caesar and the Woody Harrelson character, I believe his name's Colonel McCullough. But it is a very interesting study in wartime tropes, but you gotta kind of read between the lines and understand the subtleties of what the movie does to really get it. And if you're not big on subtleties, if you're going in there expecting it to just be a reinforcement of patriarchy, you'll miss it. And it's because, you know, they're dealing, and this has already been out there, so I can spoil this because it's already been spoiled. Both these characters are dealing with the death of a son. And that's a big biblical metaphor because you've got the binding of Isaac and the willingness to sacrifice one's son for God. And the significant thing, there's all kinds of interpretations of the story of the binding of Isaac. And the reason it's called the binding of Isaac and not the attempted murder of Isaac is because God stays Abraham's hand. And my tradition, the way I was taught the meaning of that story, was not that, you know, it shows what Abraham was willing to do for God and showing his loyalty. I was taught that means God going, whoa, what are you, stupid? Like, why do you think I wanted you to do this? Prank, troll, joke. Don't do this. And that ties into sort of the Jewish concept of L'chaim, life first. And it's a very early message in the Torah that no human sacrifice, no more. So I went, oh, interesting. It's that sort of thing. And it is an action movie. And I was really impressed with the way they still had explosions and yet still ended on a really powerful metaphor as well. And I won't ruin that because it's a cool one to kind of, it's another Rorschach blot, different people. I mean, my husband and I got different interpretations of what the big climax ends up meaning. And I think we're both right. I think there's deliberately numerous interpretations to that. But getting back to Caesar and Colonel McCullough, they make decidedly different choices at critical moments. And it's not one is black and one is white. It's not as simple as Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. It's almost more like, well, no, it is not a black or white yin and yang relationship. They are shades opposite from each other. They are so similar, but for a few key things. And it really does, it left me with a lot of thoughts about how propaganda related to masculinity affects men in times of war, in times of struggle, and this idea of strength that I keep going back to as being this cold, vicious, bloody concept when it comes to men. And, you know, people miss that there's this character in Maurice, who is a very different kind of man, motion captured by a woman. I thought that was interesting. I'll look up the credits, like, oh, interesting. Maurice is played by a chick. Sweet. But Maurice is compassionate and caring and kind and mostly pacifistic, but he's not cowardly. Like, he's in there with everybody else. He just doesn't let those things you're supposed to do as a leader, or those things you're supposed to do as an alpha man, get in his way. And there's this beautiful moment that you realize just how humble Maurice really is in the film. And it's like, oh my God, it's subtle again. But it's like, whoa, this says so much. And I think that Maurice, being sort of the Samwise Gamgee to Caesar's Frodo, says a lot about, you know, the evolution of masculinity. And it would have seemed really touchy-feely if it was two people, but because it's two monkeys, it's apes, it's far enough that we can step back from it and go, isn't that a beautiful image? And the fact that they deal with, you know, you can't go through all the things that those characters have gone through. You can't go through and see all the things they've seen without having a lot of trauma, without feeling really broken. And they don't shy away from that. And I think that's an element that they miss. It's that the masculine framework does not allow for dealing with loss adequately. And so both main characters do different stupid things because they're dealing with loss and there's no outlet for it. And this is why, you know, mourning rituals are so important. And there's a critical scene where the mourning of the dead is interrupted by more war. And that, I mean, if you've ever had to deal with that sort of thing, those rituals at those moments are super, super, super important. And if people don't have that and they're not able to mourn in the way that feels right for them, it can really mess them up because you're denying someone closure. And it was very emotional. I knew it was going to be emotional. I didn't realize going in. I was really prepared for, oh my God, it's, you know, going to be like the end of Boardwalk Empire. And like, I was preparing myself for the worst. And it was so much more affirming and so much more a message of there's more than one kind of strength. And it's funny because I just talked about this in the, you know, the Peggy Noonan Knuckles video, that war general, and I notice he's not a general, he's a colonel, and that's symbol again, for all the people saying, oh, it really hits you over the head. Well, yeah, because it's an action movie and somebody who doesn't have a film degree needs to be able to follow the basics. But if you look, there's a secondary level of nuance that is really great, that works kind of against the main, we gotta blow shit up and have fist fights because it's a summer blockbuster. And I really like that. That's, you know, going in that tradition of those old war films, right down to the bad ape character that is straight out of, you know, it's sort of the fool in in classical plays, you have to have the comic relief so it doesn't get too heavy. And that's exactly what this Bad Ape character does. He's straight out of, you know, those characters who could have been played by Don Knotts back in the day. I know I'm dating myself with that reference, but there's always that guy in those older films that are super, super serious because you have to lighten it up for the audience. You know, when these movies were made, people were at war or just coming back from war. And if you went too heavy the way these outrage warriors want you to, you'd re-traumatize your audience. And so a movie like War for the Planet of the Apes is for people who have been through some pretty serious shit. And you may have made the Maurice choices, and good for you. I think he's sort of what we'd all like to be able to be, you know, but we're able to be that because we have the Caesars of the world, and we even have the Colonel McCulloughs of the world who, you know, even though he's the villain, he's not fighting the battle he or anyone else thought he was fighting at the beginning of the movie. And these are really important. I mean, even though a soldier is the bad guy, there's still kind of a poignance and a compassion for that character. There's also, you know, that heavy mantle of leadership theme that they allow Caesar to make mistakes that aren't mistakes. It's that there's no good choice. Over and over and over again, Caesar has been faced with there's just no good choice. And they gave him, I think, the right ending. It's very, very in the tradition that I was talking about film stuff. There's sort of a common theme with characters like Caesar going all the way back to, you know, biblical metaphors that you see it over and over and over again, and there's a reason for that. And to me, without spoiling it, to me, the meaning is you do what you can with the time you have. And I think that too often people feel like if they don't have the big cross the finish line successful ending, everything's been for nothing. I hear that a lot from people I talk to, especially after the whole Gamergate thing. I heard a lot of people go, you know, what did I do this for? Why did I fight this? There's no changing this. There's nothing we can do. I said to a few of them, did you stand up for what you believe in? Do you still believe wholeheartedly in the things you fought for? And they said, yeah, I do. There are a few things here and there. I said, did you learn something? They say, absolutely. And I say, well, that's what it was for. You know, did you live your life as best you could to the best of your ability? That's the goal. And, you know, when you're going back to figures like, you know, Abraham and Isaac, those things, I mean, that's what the patriarchs of Jewish myth stood for. All of them were imperfect. All of them had colossal character flaws. None of them is like Jesus of the New Testament. All of them are heavily, heavily flawed people. And they did the best they could. They played their part. And the study, when you go through those old books, and can you tell? I'm kind of obsessed with this stuff. Because when you look at gender and you look at patriarchy, you have to go back to, you know, the original 3 patriarchs and 4 matriarchs of the Jewish traditions, because that's where all this biblical root stuff springs from. And the number 7 is not an accident. Numerology is all through the Old Testament, and the fact that there's more women than men is not an accident either. Like, all this stuff matters when you're studying this stuff. But you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as the patriarchs in the Old Testament, the Torah, and they're all very, very different men. And what's changed as things of evolved or devolved, as the case may be, simplified for the purposes of wartime propaganda, is we're left with Abraham and elements of Jacob. I'll say Jacob, but we've lost Isaac as a patriarchal archetype. And the reason for that is Isaac is considered the passive patriarch, the Maurice. He's less willing to speak up in public. He's less likely to be the center of attention. And a lot of them think it's because his father tried to kill him. And, you know, he needed his wife picked out for him and all this stuff, but he still serves a very, very important role. And that introverted patriarch is something we don't celebrate nearly enough in modern culture. And I think that War for the Planet of the Apes gives that a great nod in the character of Maurice and his arc. And because you could, yeah, I mean, Caesar definitely has elements of Jacob, and I already compared Colonel McCullough to Abraham. And so while I agree that there's a study of patriarchy in the biblical sense, in the templates for masculinity, it's not the evil that classical feminist interpretation treats it as, because it brings back that third part of the patriarchal trinity. It brings back that passive patriarchal role model, which is a really important one for I'll dare say geeks, you know, the introverts, the shy guys, the guys who aren't the life of the party, people who play video games. You know, that's an important one that we've lost. And so it's nice to see a movie like Planet of the Apes, which is a war movie, it's right in the title, bring that back. And that's where I'll leave it. That's my different interpretation. And maybe it's because I'm more aware of the Judaic interpretations of these stories than, you know, the traditional Christian interpretations, or, you know, it's kind of the atheist screw it all interpretations. But that's kind of where I went, and the film takes you there using various metaphors related to Jewish myth. It pulls you right back into that interpretation, and that's where I got it. I'm not just pulling it out of nowhere. I swear, the movie takes you there. So there's my extra content. So this replaces the Monday video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to put it up now, just so it's fresh, because it is a holiday in Canada. So I'm going to take it. I need to be better to myself that way. I know you guys will understand. I just want to keep the content current because, yeah, reasons. Okay, thanks. Bye.